the crack. Tom and Jack having a crack.
If I speak to him, maybe he'll shut up. You know what I mean? Like, it rarely works that way. If I speak to him, maybe he'll shut up and learn his lesson. But 9 times out of 10, they just go, "Oh, we're having a back and forth. I'll just carry on." Then there'll be stuff.
Well, it's kind of funny now. So the other comedians thought it was very funny. Like, they thought that what I said was very disproportionate to what came at me.
Amazing. That's the absolute best. Where someone's gone, I quite like him. You can fuck off. You can't.
Yeah. But the positive of that though is you can now get your recording and do a classic comedian destroys heckler and stick that on.
It might be a clip, but as I said what I was saying, I was like, what am I saying? And it was like, it's something I would never say. You know, when you use a phrase or a word you'd never use.
What did you say? I mean, by the way, we've started recording.
You started recording.
Oh, of course we have. This is great. Tom and Jack having the crack. We're here with the lovely Joe Bingham.
Hello,
Joe.
We're going to get into it, but
splendid, man.
We're in the middle of a war story about Jack ruining someone's life at the Comedy Store.
So the first act that went on, Felicity Ward, who's amazing. Like she jumped off stage to confront someone to tell them to shut up talking. There seemed to be a lot of people talking who I think they just didn't know that you aren't meant to talk. If that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
But when I was on stage, there was a guy, I was doing a bit, and he heckled and he heckled again, and I just thought, I'm not going to be able to do this bit because he's just going to keep shouting out. So I confronted him, and we were having like a bit of a back and forth that was nonsensical. And then I just said out of nowhere, "Are you a dickhead?" Which he obviously didn't have a reply to. And bear in mind, like, I couldn't see him, like he was in the back corner, so it was pitch dark. And then I just had to. I got lucky. Now I just stopped that bit. I didn't finish it, and then I just started up on a new bit, and it sort of worked. But my set was very disjointed, like it was very discombobulated, like. But everything sort of landed, and they basically said to me at the end that they thought I did well, and that they'll get me back to do another 20 on a Thursday rather than go to weekends. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
You know, because I did, yeah, and I did think I fucked this up, like, do you know what I mean? Like in my head, but then when I listened back to it, everything did land. Like if I just shouldn't have. If I hadn't stopped with the heckler, if I just kept going, I think it would have worked a lot better. But I got very confused too, because my normal opening joke, Don told me he didn't like it, so I decided to drop it. And then you're trying to create a set that has flow, but has a different order. Mm-hmm. And then when I got there, they said, "You're not doing 20, you're doing 18 because of the time. So then you have to drop 2 minutes." And then I did this stupid thing, which you only do when you're kind of nervous. I then had a set list, and then like a minute before I went on stage, I was like, "I'm going to change that." Which was a stupid thing to do too. So everything worked. I think it was just, we're one of those ones where I'm in my head a bit, like I'm thinking, as I'm doing a bit, I'm thinking, what bit am I going to do next and what time am I on, rather than just, I should have just been in the room a bit more. But overall, it was all right.
Good.
That's kind of what you were saying, Joe, just before we started recording, about like people there's a difference between like a promoter or a professional assessing your set versus Joe Public.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Like they know, like they know when it's been difficult. Or
do you feel like, and obviously this is in the context of obviously Don Juan is the godfather of the Comedy Store, but do you feel that a promoter saying to you, "Jack, I don't like your opening joke," you've got a fair recourse to go, "Well, yeah, but those guys always do. And they're the guys who've bought a ticket to laugh at a comedy show. And you've seen me do this opening joke, and that's why you booked me for this gig." Like it's not a rogue thing to just be like, "Yeah, but drop that." Actually,
no. But he didn't ask me to drop it, and he didn't say it wasn't a good joke or it didn't work. He just felt it was too long.
But it planted that seed in your head of like, oh, should I do something about it, or should I move it, or
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'd still use the joke in other places. I just think from like my point of view is if you want to work with someone and they tell you that that there's something they don't like, I didn't have to drop it. Like I definitely didn't have to drop it, but it's just like it's a form of appeasement. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm you know what I mean? Like I want to get back in there. Like, so I just think it'd be foolish to go if you're trying to get more work there. It'd be foolish to use a joke that he doesn't really like.
Yeah, true.
Sense?
Yeah,
and I have heard of someone who did a thing where I won't say what they did, but they did a kind of a gimmicky thing, and he did say to them he didn't like it, and then they went back the next time and they did it again, and then he was just like, "I'm not booking you again," and that's perfectly within his right, like, you know what I mean. He again, you don't have to act on it, but like whether you act on it or whether you don't act on it, there's you have to live with what the
repercussions
of that the repercussions of that is. So for me, it just seems like a logical thing. And I, to be honest, I've done it in other clubs where someone has said informally to me that there's a bit of mine that they don't really like, and then I just thought, well, I won't ever say that in that person's club either.
Yeah,
even though this other person I know would never not book you over something like that.
How do you feel about it, Joe? How would you? Have you come across that? Have you had to deal with anything like that?
Not too often, but I have. I suppose I've got two trains of thought now. I think the first one is opening jokes in particular are like very tricky because a lot of the time your opener is quite often one of your oldest jokes as well sometimes because your opening joke is you starting strong. So you go, well, I'm going to start with a joke that always works, make them laugh early. I then sometimes, and I don't know about you guys, I sometimes get in my head where I'm like, I'm very bored of my opener now. I've said it so many times over and over again. I'm sick of it. I'd like to write a new one, but it's such a tricky thing to test out because if you're looking to write a new opening joke and test it out, you're not doing a new material gig where you sandwich the new material in the middle, and if it doesn't work, it's fine. I'll get them back on board. You're rolling the dice on. My first joke tonight might not land, and they'll immediately look at me and go, I don't think I find this guy funny. And then you're fighting an uphill battle for the rest of your set. So I think
totally.
Me personally, I find juggling, I'd like a new opener, but how do I figure it out? Quite a difficult one. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm painfully bored of mine. I almost wish it had stopped working at every gig so that I'd have a reason to give it up, to be honest.
I think you just have to take those risks though, and I think you can use a different joke that you have that works, but I think you do have to just take those risks and try new openers. It's like when you first start, like when you first start, nothing you have works, and you were prepared to go on stage with nothing, and I think the more stuff you try on stage that's a risk and that's brand new, the better you'll get.
Yeah,
but it does mean that you're going to have nights where, well, that Wednesday was a waste of time.
Yeah. I think that your Joe, are you talking about like more of a not like a high pressure gig, but like a real gig, but like maybe where it's it's important that they either rebook me or that
well those ones you can't take a risk, but we're all doing gigs that you can take a risk.
The new material nights, like I know like Raj, for example, Raj often gives me a lot of stick because he's like, if we get a new material night, his theory is like sandwiching. Like I said, he's like, you start with something that works, put some new in, finish with something that works. And he gives me stick because he's like, you turn up to new material gigs and just do 10 minutes brand new off the bat. You're like, I wrote this afternoon. I'm just going to give it a go. And I'm always just like, yeah, because I wanted to figure it out. And he's got his own opinions on how well or not that works. But it's like you said, it's those gigs where you're thinking, oh, I've not seen this promoter before. I'd like him to have some faith in me. I've been able to expand on my opener. That was my first kind of dipping my toe in. The last month or so, I've just expanded on it so that I'm not as bored because now it's not just an opening joke. and me then moving on with my set. It's now my opener has become a setup to something bigger, which has been a positive. I think to your other point as well, you know, with like people telling you about bits that maybe they don't like or not to use again. I had my first one of those a few weeks ago, and it was an interesting way to be given the feedback as well, because it was I'd been at the place the week before, and then I went back the week after, and as I'm about to go on stage, the promoter comes up to me and says, "Are you going to do the same set as last week?" And I said, "No, I'm trying." Yeah, I said, "No, I was trying to work out a lot of stuff for a longer show." I said, "No, I'm trying something different this week." And he said, "Oh, good." Because I had a complaint about last week's set. I've never had this before in my life. And then he just said, "Oh, but it's fine. I'll tell you afterwards."
What?
I was like, "Oh, great! So I'll just go on stage."
That's the worst. That's the worst option you could have taken in that situation.
It's mental. I was like, "I'll just go on stage in the same room, and I'll be in my head thinking, what the fuck did that?" And he told me afterwards, and it was such a mixed message as well that I didn't really know what to take from it, because he said that there'd been one member of the audience that had an issue with a bit. And I mean, I know I've gigged with both of you guys. I wouldn't consider myself an edgy comic in any way. So I'm there thinking, how have I said something that's upset someone? And then even he was saying, well, I personally didn't think it was offensive, and I didn't think there was an issue with it. I thought it was a good joke. And then I was like, so what am I supposed to take from this? Am I supposed to be like, so one person was upset about a bit that I've done numerous times before. One person has been upset with it. So what do you want me to do with this feedback? And he had no answers for me. He just went, just take what you will. I was like, oh, great. All right. Well, glad we had this chat then. Nice one. Thanks, mate.
Sometimes I think things like that, it's a power thing. It's like they just want you to know that they have an insight into the industry. They have an insight you don't have, and they have like they can ask you to manipulate what you're doing, and ultimately you work for them. And I mean, it's not everyone everywhere, but I think we've all come across that. It
felt like a very needless conversation. Yeah, like very much maybe it was like a bit of a flexing. Is like, oh, just remember this is my club and I'm in charge. Because even afterwards, like I did the next set, and I think understandably the set I did for him after he'd just told me that before I went on stage, I felt when I was on stage it took a little bit longer to get going than usual, because I think I was stood there like, what bit was it that pissed them off? So I wasn't in the room as such because I was thinking about it.
Do they hate Birmingham? Is that what it is?
Exactly. That's 90% of my set gone. And then, but then I was like, I did the gig. It was like what we were talking about earlier, Jackie. Like it felt fine. And I came up with all these questions, and then he's still just like, all right, yeah, I'll send you an email with availability and we'll get you back in. And I was like, so why have we had this chat? Like, what have either of us gained from this?
That sounds to me, though, that he just said that to you in a thoughtless way. Someone said it to him and he just sort of said it to you. I don't really feel, it doesn't sound like, because he wasn't really, he sort of said, take what you will from it. But I think too, it's not nice to hear that your joke upsets someone, but also I think you have to accept at some point you will say something that will upset someone. Do you know what I mean? You just sort of have to accept it, and you kind of have to accept it. Like, you know, comedy, you know, it's like music. It's not for everybody, and everybody's not for everybody, and it can be like, I sometimes get very self-conscious about some jokes. I think that this could be upsetting to someone, and I don't want to upset someone. But then there's other times where I'm like, it's not really upsetting, so there's not a lot you can do about it.
It's a fine. I don't know how you guys process it, because you have just short, sometimes, especially with the off the cuff stuff, you have just short window to process whether to go for it or not. So I had an exact. So someone recently was at a show and they had it was an Israeli guy and his girlfriend was Polish, and he'd said, as I asked, how did you meet? And he's like, oh, we met because she fucking hates my neighbors. And I was dying to say that's the most Israeli thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
And I said it, but I was gigging with Ram, and so it's this like dual act. Me and him are on stage together, and I basically said it into his chest, and only Ram heard it. So that on the video, he's like cackling away, and the audience is like, "What was that?" But I was desperate to say it with my chest out to the audience. But I was like,
with confidence, yeah.
I was like, I don't want to lose the entire room.
I also think with stuff like that though as well, if you are going to say something that, because for me that's just an observation. You're not saying anything that's offensive. It's an observation on like, yeah, Israel do hate their neighbours. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's very publicly known. I think sometimes with stuff like that as well, you know, if you say something that maybe could be construed in a way and you don't say it with full belief, that's when you lose a room. If they're looking at you and thinking, I don't think even this guy is committing to this bit. Should we be concerned about this? Should we be laughing at this? Because he doesn't seem sure that we should be either.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot in that, like tone of voice and body language and everything. They're picking up on that.
And like letting them know it's silly, and letting them know you know it's silly.
Silly, yeah.
And not like should we even cover this topic?
It comes back to like, you know, everyone talks about it for seemingly forever, but I think it's only been the last couple of years or so, and everyone talks about being cancelled and stuff like that. And I don't know about you guys, but I get so many of my friends who don't do comedy, and they always say to me like, it must be so hard at the minute because you can't talk about anything about. And I always just say to them like, no, not really, because I never had any like, you know, horrendous views on the trans community or anything like that. I'm not a bubbling cauldron of hate that's waiting to spout it all. So it's not really been an issue. But I did have I did a gig in Camden, and I was talking about two of my oldest friends. I went to primary school and secondary school with them, and I was telling a story that's ultimately centers around how they both came out to me within a year of each other when we were teenagers. And I had a guy come up to me afterwards, and he said, "Is that all true?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Yeah, it's true." And he said, "Oh, okay." He's like, "No, I thought it was. I just thought I'd ask." And I said to him, I said, "What feels more feasible to you? That I do actually have some gay friends that this happened, or that I've invented two gay friends for the sake of one joke in my set?" And he just went, "Yeah, I never thought of it that way." I was like, "That's a weird question."
That is so funny. That is. Oh man.
How good do you think my imagination is?
I do have a few friends who say that to me too, that you can't say anything anymore, and it's like I just said like that's just not true. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I have friends who are teachers, and they say it, but like you know, comedy and teaching is very different. Yeah, teaching you have to be very careful what you say, but in comedy, not really. And like you said, like no one's bubbling up with hate, but like no one's trying to spread hate or propaganda or anything like that. People are trying to make jokes, and you can still joke about anything. Like if the joke is good, like we're all hearing stuff that I think people think can't be said, and then you're there and you're like, it's been said.
Yeah. So someone found the right way into it that felt authentic to them, that felt like a real opinion, or is at least emotionally real anyway, that they can tap into. And it's good when you see different people approach it from different perspectives. You're like, oh, I couldn't have said that, but that person nailed it from their perspective.
Yeah, I think I also have like a bit of an opinion at the moment as well, which is that I think that it's getting to a point where it could be foreseen as quite dangerous for the future, because like the art of conversation and debate is just going to be eradicated completely, because it's just going to be a case of, well, I'm only going to speak to people who hold the same views as me, and I'm going to close myself off to the rest of the world, and then that becomes a very dangerous place in itself. I mean, it's been in the news again this week, hasn't it, that there's obviously like a new Harry Potter video game that's come out, and J.K. Rowling did an interview around, you know, her tarnishing her legacy and people talking about that because of her comments around kind of trans women. And my big takeaway from that was like, you're allowed to disagree with her opinions, but in the same breath, she's still allowed to have her opinion. Like you can just as easily go, I don't agree with what she said, and move on. But she's still allowed to have her opinion, whether you think it's right or wrong. That's how the world works. Everybody's got their own brain.
Yeah. I think though, I think, you know, there's always been arguments that have been very hot and polarized in a way that just people wouldn't talk about. Like, you know, I think, like, for example, abortion isn't that much of a controversial issue now to talk about. But there would have been a time where people would have, certainly in Ireland where I lived, where people would have very much kept their cards close to their chest about that, because the conversation was hysterical. Do you know what I mean? It was utterly hysterical. And the transgender one, I think, is very interesting, because have you ever heard the thing in psychology about the runaway train? It's the thing, and so basically a train is running away, and there's someone on it's going to hit and kill 3 people, but you've got a chance to push one person in front of the train and save 3 people. Would you push the one person in front of the train? You've heard of that before, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that is basically the transgender argument, in that transgender women are attacked more when they're put in male environments than transgender women attack in female environments. But as things are, that train is killing 3 people. But we're now asking ourselves as a society, are we willing to push the one person in front of the train to save the 3 people? And it's very hard, because in that thing, 3 people die, but the one person who dies, you have to shoulder some responsibility for. And that's basically what happened to Nicola Sturgeon. She's now has a sense of responsibility for what that transgender woman did. So she is the person who pushed the one person and is being blamed for that now. And there's no real easy answer to that, and there never will be. Yeah,
and I think just admitting that'd be a huge step forward. Just admitting,
just for everyone to say,
there's no easy answer.
Listen, there's no easy answer to that.
Yeah, and because
of course you want to kill one person to save 3 people, but no one wants to be the person who has to live with the responsibility of killing a person.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very tricky conundrum. But people are going at it like it's a very easy way to pick sides, and it's not.
The older I get, I don't know how you two feel about this. I think comedy is really good for this. The older I get, my biggest pet peeve with people is certainty. When you are like so secure in your belief about, and I don't care where it is on a spectrum of, you know, political ideas, whatever it is, but it's that you believe you found the truth. And like,
because it borders on willful ignorance after a bit. Like, to a point, it borders on, oh, you're just choosing to just shut yourself off to any foreign interference or any other opinion. You're so set in your ways, you've just got, no, I am right and you are wrong, and that's it. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. But on the flip side, though, I do think if you just get to a certain point in your life, now I'm not going to do this, but I do think if you get to a certain point in your life and you just decide that, okay, this is what I know, and that's it, and that's rigid, I think it makes your life easier.
It does.
It will. It definitely will.
It does. That's why it's so seductive. Yeah.
Totally. I also think that, like, I also have an awareness that I think, firstly, I think comedy has come a long way from where it was. Because I don't know about you guys. If you see a comic that used to, you know, be on the circuit in the 80s or something, and they're still doing the same jokes now,
oh yeah,
you do feel a bit uneasy, where you're like, oh no, we have come a long way, because this is no longer acceptable, because we're sat there being like, you probably shouldn't make jokes about beating your wife, big man. You know what I mean? Like, let's move on from that. I also think that, I don't know, from me specifically, like, I've no real, I suppose to come back to like the trans piece, because there has been a lot of it in comedy as well. For me, it's like, I'm not going to do a special on it, because I just don't care. If someone tells me I'm a woman and they've got a beard, I'll just go, okay, you said you're a woman, you knock yourself out. I'll refer to you as a she, then that is fine, because you've told me. Yeah. I don't care. And I think there's an element of, because of that, when I've watched specials that have centered around the topic, a lot of the time I've not felt any kind of way about it, because I'm not impacted by it. You know what I mean? I've got the lens of the straight white man, of me being like, or maybe, you know, you can look at it and go, oh, maybe that was a bit far, or, you know, maybe you shouldn't have done a third special on the topic if you claimed not to care about it. But I'm also in a luxury position where I'm also able to step away from it and go, well, that's not got much to do with me. I will support my friends that are in those circles, but I'm not going to go on Twitter and try and lambast a man who is never going to see my tweet, because he's already too big.
Yeah, I think obviously we're talking about Chappelle and Ricky Gervais here. I think it was a trap, and I think their ego and their arrogance led them into a trap. And I think certainly like Chappelle, his early stand up was amazing, and the stuff he did on race was brilliant, And then there's a sort of a place where he's been elevated to, you're a voice of, you're a sage, you're a voice of wisdom. And then it's sort of like, then your ego's kind of going, people are saying that this is the big debate, this is the defining debate of our time, like, so you're being lured to weigh in on it, but actually you're right, he has no experience of it, like there's no he does say he has a trans friend, doesn't he, like, but like, let's be honest about it. I'd say his life experience of transgenderism is very minimal.
And that was like Josh Balfour was on, he had that great point that is basically the equivalent. It's Josh's point.
Oh yeah.
Really, and Josh was like, that's the equivalent of like every racist going like, I've got a black mate. I've got a black mate.
It is completely, completely.
And I think the other thing that was quite ironic about Chappelle's thing was he had a very funny and very famous bit from back in the day when he was talking about watching the news in the aftermath of 9/11. And he's watching the news, and the whole country's in a state of panic. And then the newscaster is like, "We're now cutting live to Ja Rule. Ja, what are your thoughts on it?" And he's like, "Who the fuck said call Ja? I want to hear what Ja's got to say about 9/11." And it was such a funny bit. But then I'm looking at him talking about the trans debate, thinking, you're Ja Rule talking about 9/11 now. Nobody asked for your opinion.
I'm looking for some answers that Dave might not have.
Right
now. But having said all of that, like, for all we know, they could be sitting in meetings where someone's just gone to them, listen, I think if you do a bit about transgender, we can make an extra 5 million. And they're just like, do you know what? I've got family, 5 million. I could, that's my daughter's education. So do you know what I mean? Like,
I reckon his thing, because he had his original point was quite interesting, which was that as a black man in America, this group seems to have acquired a lot more rights, status, sympathy, empathy than we have over 60 years.
That was his point.
And like, whether you agree on that in sticks and stones, that's quite an interesting, like, perspective. Like, that is interesting. That is kind of like, which lever do you pull the trolley? Who do you say? But then I think the other two were just like, oh, you tell me I can't talk about it? Well, I'm gonna fucking
that's what became the frustration for me, because I suppose my big frustration is I've not picked my pop culture idols particularly well over the years. So like, people say to me, "Who's your favorite musician?" It was always Kanye West. And people, when you're a comedian, it's like, "Who's your favorite comedian?" It was always Chappelle. And it makes me sad that when I'm asked those questions now, I have to caveat it by going, "Oh, old Kanye and old Chappelle are my favorites." Like, and I don't know. I suppose to your point as well, Tom, that was how it felt to me, because I went and saw him and Chris Rock at the O2. It was an incredibly funny show, because it was Chris Rock basically talking about everything he's been up to in the absence of him on the stand-up scene. Years and years of being away from stand-up, what he's been up to, it was just a great hour of stand-up. And he opens it at the top by saying, "I'm not going to talk about the slap." And then Chappelle comes out right after him and just talks about the slap, talks about the attack at the Hollywood Bowl, and how he was still painted as the villain despite him being attacked by an armed man. It was a great hour of stand-up, and you're like, oh yeah, so you are still an incredible stand-up. Nobody has disputed that, and you are still great. But it was that point of, I think he lost the premise that was an interesting premise in his first one, in his first special. And then, like you said, the second two were almost just a case of like, it becomes a weak argument, and he's coming out going, "Listen, you guys all came for me and attacked me, and I don't care. But here's another hour on it about why I do care. And then you attacked me again, I still don't care. But here's another hour about why really I do care, actually, that you're attacking me." Like, it would have been a lot more fun for him to just go, let's just talk about something else. You know what I mean? You've done it now. Let's just talk about something else. But still a very funny man. his own right. Very funny.
Yeah. What's the one? Killing Them Softly. It's like still as good as it gets, really.
I remember when I was a kid. So my two favorite comedians growing up were Chris Rock and Dave Chapelle, because they were the two comics me and my brother found on Comedy Central. Like Bring the Pain and Killing Them Softly will be on Comedy Central all the time.
And I can see that in your stand-up as well, Tom, because you've got that one bit where you say the N word repeatedly. So I can see the influences.
There's no difference. It's just. Why does
you wear the long leather, you're all in leather.
Why does he hit the R so hard? Like a speed run. He seems to enjoy that bit the most.
Oh God. Come here anyway, Joe. Tell us about this OnlyFans stuff.
Oh, mate, yeah. So there was obviously the advert that went around the comedy circuit, which was basically saying OnlyFans want to run a comedy competition and we're going to give you 50 grand. And there was a lot of skepticism around it. I think initially, I think a lot of people were like, "Why would I want to work with OnlyFans?" Understandably,
yeah.
But I remember it came to the day where it was the last day to enter, and I'm looking at it thinking, 50 grand's 50 grand, you know what I mean? But I was still a bit on the fence. And they had the application process was you uploaded like a video as to why you've applied and put it onto a portal. And I looked at it and I looked at the very established names that were attached to the project and thought, well, maybe that adds a bit more weight to it being a legitimate thing. And at the time, it was a mistake, it turns out, a logistical error on their part. The portal for uploading applications was public. So there was a spell where you could see everybody who'd applied. And I scrolled through it for a little bit. And I was like, there's actually a lot of comedians that I really respect on the circuit have applied to this. So I just thought, you know what, probably nothing will come from it. I'll just throw my hat in the ring and applied. And they ended up calling me 2 days before shooting started and said, yeah, you're in if you want to be in. And it was all very, very quick turnaround, not much time to make a decision. It's like, we need to know now, do you want to do it or not? So I think I basically said to them on the phone, like, look, my only concern, because the producer was an independent producer. He didn't work for OnlyFans. So I just said to him, I'll be completely honest with you, that brand is the only thing that's concerning me and putting me off. And I'm not willing to do anything on a TV show that's going to, you know, bring whatever reputation I have into disrepute or anything. And he just said, no, there's nothing like that. It is going to be centered around comedy. And everything that we get you to do has already been signed off by the professional comedians that are attached to it. So I just thought, at the end of the day, fuck it, it'll be an interesting week of filming at the very least.
Yeah.
And it was, but it wasn't at all what I was expecting it to be. No.
Was it like The Apprentice? Did you stay in a house or?
They put us up in the Hilton in Angel, which was very nice of them. And I did say to them, I only live down the road. But they said no, you have to be in the hotel, which was it was winter, so it was nice that it was cozy in the Hilton. But it was a bit. None of us knew what to expect because they didn't tell us anything really.
Right.
And we genuinely just thought it's a comedy competition, and stand-ups have applied to be in it, so they're going to get us to do stand-up. And they were telling us about, they run these LMAOF stand-up events. So OnlyFans have started running stand-up events around the US and stuff like that. And to be completely honest, one of the big reasons I applied was it was run by an American company and an American production house. So I thought if I can make some connections in America, it can only be useful. But it did turn out to be a survival reality show, essentially, where each day we were set a different comedy-centric challenge. And then there'd be eliminations at the end of each day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so not at all. Like every one of us after the first day was like, I didn't know I was signing up to a reality TV show, which is essentially what it was. And it was funny because it was like American producers that were making it. So none of us had any idea that we'd essentially signed up for like a reality TV show. And because they were American producers, I think they were trying to, turns out they were very nice guys, but I think they were trying to engineer it in a sense of like that typical American reality show style thing. So, you know, there was like diary rooms and everything for like talking about what you'd been through, and you could tell from the way they were like probing the questions that they were trying to generate a bit of drama or something. And they even said to me at one point, "Oh, we just assumed, you know, comedians would be a bit of ego and stuff like that." And I said, "Yeah, but you didn't account for the one factor, which is we're all British, mate. Like, and we all work together, so we are very." Let me just pull these blinds. I look like a ghost. There you go. I was like, but I just said to him, I was like, you know, we all work together, and it's an environment which is, you know, most of the time a lot more supportive than you probably think it is. So they'd be asking questions about like, oh, who do you think was the worst today, or blah, and you'd be like, no one. I am going to see these people again. No one. They're all great. Go away. And I definitely think in some respects that maybe made worse television for them. But I also think that from our perspective, there was an element of us being like, yeah, we have an obligation to help you make good TV, but
TV, yeah.
Also, it's like we also felt a bit duped as well, because we were like, well, this isn't what any of us thought we were signing up to. We just thought, maybe naively, that we'd get to actually do comedy because that's what you said it was for. So my mindset basically then just became every challenge, let's just get through this. It went from let's try and win 50 grand to I just want to get to the final so that I can take part in everything and have a laugh. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, the day after you got eliminated, we did this thing and it was mental and loads of fun, because then I'd get FOMO. So then my thing became, let's just survive each challenge so that I get to experience all of it, essentially. And on the whole, it was a fun week. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, and watching yourself on television, I found incredibly. Oh, it's incredibly uncomfortable. Like I remember the first time I had it was I did when I did the BBC New Comedy Awards thing. And I remember just waking up one day and being like, "Oh shit, my episode's out." And there's something very weird. I feel like, I don't know, the way your mind works when you're growing up is like, if you're on TV, you've made it. You're a star if you're on TV. There's something very jarring about watching yourself on TV whilst you're ironing a shirt to go to the office for your day job, and you're like, I shouldn't be going to the office anymore. I'm watching myself on TV, but you're like, oh, the reality is this is actually just a wholly uncomfortable experience, and I wasn't a fan. I felt very uncomfortable about it.
Have you been recognised from the BBC thing since you've been?
Bollocks, mate. The people who watch BBC New Comedy Awards are comedians.
Yeah.
No one else is watching that.
A lot of open mics. He's signing autographs at open mics.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that was the worst thing though. I did Comedy in Your Eye the night of the episode coming out, and I got there. And Sam Coe, the little bastard, he was like, "I'm going to introduce you as like the BBC's Joe Bingham." And I said, "Please don't." I was like, "Please, for the love of God, don't do it." And he was like, "Okay." And he goes on and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for your first act? You might recognise him from the BBC." And then I walked on, I went, "You won't. You absolutely will not recognise him."
Yeah.
But I had that for about a week, very much just like, getting a bit of a. It was the typical comedians thing, wasn't it? It's a pat on the back and a well done for doing it, but also what we're more comfortable with, the little jabs and jives of like, "Oh, are you not too big time to be gigging with us now?" And you're just like, please stop. I don't even like it when audience members come up to me after shows and go, "Oh, I really enjoyed that." I'm just like, please don't. Isn't
that a weird dynamic we all have to deal with? Of like, I'm up here because I want the extent. I mean, in exchange for doing some work, in exchange for jokes and doing a good job. But I want some attention. But the minute, because I'm the same, minute I get off stage, I'm like, I feel quite uncomfortable if anyone's like, "Oh, that was good," or
it's a weird. I used to find it very uncomfortable, but now I'm okay with it, because I realized that a lot of time if they come up to you, you don't need to say anything. You just they want to say something. So now I just kind of listen to. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, I think in the past I used to kind of feel that I need to say something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like you still have to be on.
Yeah. That they're expecting you to still be the act or something. Whereas now I just kind of, and I think after a while you sort of realize that is kind of part of the package. Do you know what I mean? I think it's like I definitely think when you're in a big club, and if people in the audience come up talking to you afterwards, and the promoters see you chatting to them, I think it looks good, because it's you're trying to sell. A part of comedy is you're selling socializing.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talk about it. You know, big comics, they're like, oh god, I had to do a meet and greet and merchandise and but that's what people want, because like I know you now. You're not just a random joke teller for the night. I know you, and I'll follow you, and I'll find you again, and I'll come see you again.
And also I think, like, if you're going for a night out with just one other person, say, right, you could go to a pub, right, just the two of you go to a pub, and the likelihood of talking to other people is probably less than if the two of you go to a comedy gig, because for some reason at comedy gigs people do end up talking to each other, and it can be because the MC talks to people too, like, so the MC asks, so what do you do for a living, and then you'd always see someone might go over to them afterwards and go, oh, you work for BAD or something like that, you know. So I do think, you know, there's comedy's a magnet for lonely people, like.
Yeah, I also think as well, like, my because I was talking to my therapist about the weird divide about, you know, you go on stage and you put yourself out there, but then you don't want to be seen afterwards, and she was saying to me that, like, we see ourselves as who we are, which is we're just normal people who figured out that we have a skill or an ability and to be able to do something, but to them, like, we're almost celebrity status for the night, because you're the person on stage under the spotlight trying to captivate in that whole room. So as much as we're still very much like, no, I'm still a normal person with normal everyday problems and a life and so on and so forth, they look at you for that evening and they're like, oh, but you're a star, of course you are, because you're on stage doing this. They don't see a differential between it.
And there's an element of magic to it, because everyone's afraid of public speaking, and like we all were at the start, but after a while you become so acclimatized to it. It does look like magic, because most people are sitting there imagining how they would feel if they were in our shoes, and they'd be shitting it, because, like, they don't realize, you know, like, let's take for last night. Like, last night you had a comedy store with 300 or 400 people, right? But that's 5 years of practice. But if you've never done any public speaking, in your mind, what I'm doing looks insane.
Especially when you layer on that so many people think we're coming up with it. So many people think
on the spot. He's just walked up there and started talking.
Yeah.
And like, what? Like, it does look like magic. It genuinely looks like magic, and it looks incomprehensible almost, you know.
I sometimes wonder, I'd love to know what you two think of this, because I was gigging with Jamie D'Souza last night, and obviously he's so good at the misdirections.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Every other line's got a misdirection. And I sometimes wonder, is that more like a magic trick where it's like,
yeah, it is.
Or is it the person telling us? Because, you know, some of the comics are great storytellers, and you almost don't see any room for a punchline, and all of a sudden one comes out of nowhere. I was just thinking, I wonder which one is more magical to the crowd.
They both are, but I do think the misdirect, because, like, Sergi's a master of misdirection, and he was a magician.
Yeah.
And the way he tells those jokes is like a magician presenting his trick, you know. But then I think some of the longer kind of stuff, certainly with callbacks, it's probably a bit more like Darren Brown magic. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, but again, it's all misdirection to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But, like, some of it is very much, they really present the misdirection, where sometimes the misdirection's hidden, but it's all misdirection.
That is actually a very good analogy. I was just thinking about it then when you said it. It is almost like, you know, someone who's doing a joke of setup and punchline is almost like close-up magic. Like, you know, someone in a stall on the street, you think the ball's under that cup, it's over here, and you get that immediate, like, oh my god. Whereas somebody who's doing like a longer form, doing stories, doing bits, it is like Darren Brown, because you will tell a story, and you will no bit of information, because word economy is so important. No bit of information in a longer setup is not important. But the delivery is, oh, I'm just telling you bits and pieces, and then the payoff at the end is, a little nugget of information that you gave them back here that they forgot about, they're reminded of in the payoff, and they're like, "Oh my god, yeah, okay, that's brilliant, that's a very good analogy. Well done, Jeff. Yeah, that's
thank you, Jill.
Even you doing that, it's blown my mind on this Friday afternoon.
The whole hour was worth it.
No. But the other thing too, like, one of the reasons why I think callbacks are so magical is, to an audience, it looks like the whole thing was written in one go in a linear manner, but actually in reality, they weren't written at the same time, or they certainly weren't written in a linear way. But it has the illusion of extreme intelligence. Like, it looks so much clever. The illusion
of intelligence would be a great name for a special.
Yeah, but a lot of comedy is the illusion of intelligence too, isn't it? Like, it looks, when you start doing it, you realize it's testing in a lab basically. But then when you present it as if you've sat down and you've spent an hour writing 20 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? And from that point of view, it does look very smart.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you manage to tie your bits into anything happening in the room. People are like,
"Wow,
he must have just come up with that right now." Joe, I was thinking, is your OnlyFans thing gonna air in America, or is it just an American production company that did it?
All over, yeah. So they've got their own. I think they've got their own network and their own. It's like its own thing, OnlyFans TV, apparently. So
yeah.
I downloaded the app, and then I basically just like fast forwarded through every episode just to make sure that I don't look like too much of a bellend.
Yeah.
But it's out all over, and we've all got OnlyFans accounts now, and we've racked up like a lot of subscribers on there. But
what are you up to? What are you up to on it?
I haven't checked, but I think there's like a few hundred on there. But I think a lot of it is I think it's prone to like a lot of bots, or a lot of it is people kind of promoting their own stuff. Or I had a message come through that was just a very graphic video, and then just like, "What are you going to post on here?" And I was like,
and I was drunk.
I've not thought about it.
I was drunk when I sent it. So
hey, but thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. But that's still a conversation that I'm having with like the team that are at OnlyFans, which is kind of like, but what do you expect us to do with this platform now? Because I don't see kind of, how I could monetize it. Like their example for it was Matt Rife. And they said Matt Rife is like an ambassador for the OnlyFans platform. But then they show you his kind of intro video on his profile. And it's obviously pretty boy Matt Rife being like, "Oh, hey guys, comedian Matt Rife here. If you subscribe to my OnlyFans, I'm going to be uploading like some comedy clips and some videos and some workout tutorials." And I'm like, there's the money maker. There it is. Pretty boy muscle man Matt Rife is going to post topless videos of him doing push-ups. Like that's what's going to pull the money in. And it's tricky because that's the reason that they did this show, and they did a fashion one in America, and I think they've got some other ones coming up, because they want to rebrand away from what they became. But comedy felt like a complex one to rebrand from. Like if 95% of your viewership is people that want to see pictures of toes, like I don't think they're all of a sudden going to start paying money to see a clip of me doing crowd work at Angel on a Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think that the show was definitely worth doing, and you had a chance of winning big money. But I think OnlyFans doing comedy is like when McDonald's started doing salads. Like, you just know it's not going to last.
Yeah.
And no one's going to McDonald's for the salads.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and they did little bits of fruit in the tub and everything like that. But it's still it's a burger company.
The better decision. It would have been smarter if they used the platform and give it like a rebrand, like a sub brand,
and that's what they're doing really well in America with LMAOF, which is their live shows, because the OnlyFans brand will obviously like pull people in because it's a recognizable brand. But ultimately, people are still just going because it's a comedy show that's been put on in their town or in their city. Like, people aren't going because they're like, oh, I've never considered going to a comedy show before, but if OnlyFans are putting one on, I'll go. The reality of it is they're latching on to what's already a well-established medium, which is people go to comedy shows. So from a business perspective, it makes sense for them. And it was a fun experience, and I think anything that teaches you more about that side of the industry around TV and production and editing and stuff like that is useful in the long run. But yeah, I certainly never went into it thinking this is what's going to make my dreams come true. I just went into it being like, well, they've asked me, and I mean, what else am I going to do this week? Like,
you just got to try it all, haven't you? Because like you don't know what's going to stick or like what's going to work or
100%, yeah.
Or who you're going to meet, you know, those people who are doing that, they might go on and do something else. They liked you, you know, you get another opportunity somewhere else.
And I think too, like everyone's long-term goal is to get to a position where you're good enough and you have a following to tour, you know, the theaters or whatever. Like, and anything can be the catalyst that gives you a following. It really can. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, look at like so after like Hannah did The Traitors. I mean, she's catapulted into a whole new level of, you know, being able to do near enough whatever she wants. And I'm sure she'll do great on those live shows, and I'll be like, I'm done, you know, I've sort of hit a new level and I won't go back down. And yeah, I think anyone who poo-poos anything like building up a social media following, doing anything and everything that gives you exposure, I would never criticize anyone for doing anything like that. Like,
no, there was a guy in Ireland, you know, like reality TV shows first started, you know, there was like when Big Brother, around the same time Big Brother first started, Ireland did a kind of Survivor one on an island, and there was a guy on it, he won it, and he beat up a fella, he punched a fella on it too, like they got it. But he ran for the Senate in Ireland after that, right? And to get elected to the Senate, it's like the House of Lords. To get elected, only politicians can vote for you, right? And he topped the polls, and all the politicians voted for him because he had this bit of fame. But none of them knew him, and none of them had watched the show. But they all had heard he punched someone on the telly, and that was it. He topped, you know, and that was 20 years ago. He's still in the Senate now. You know what I mean?
So I should have punched someone. So next time I get on TV,
someone.
physical violence is the route to success. Like, I'm going to give that a
go. Well, I mean, because I've worked in advertising for like 14 years. Like, name recognition is massive in anything.
Anything.
Like, yeah. Jack, you probably know this story better than me. When George W. Bush ran for president, a big part of why he got elected for Texas governor is people thought it was his dad. People thought his dad was on the ballot.
Because, like, name recognition would work like that. Yeah. Well, the Kennedy name is very powerful in politics. Yeah. Like, you know.
Yes, if people just have like a small sense of like, oh yeah, I've heard of Joe from somewhere.
Well, you do know that on a ballot paper, the first name gets a hit.
Go on.
You get an extra 5% for if you're the first name on the ballot.
Oh, you mean literally just the top?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that, to be honest, lads, that's the kind of, I suppose, the trick of the Edinburgh Fringe too. Like, did you ever see Messiah Graham? All his shows are in the first page. You know, 101 jokes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of calling I feel a bit praised and shameless about it, but I'm thinking of calling my Edinburgh show this year One Extremely Funny Irishman. So that'll put me in the front page.
It's marketing genius in fairness.
You know, like it's a cheap trick, but like other people are doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah, who cares? You know?
Yeah, you don't be the one to put down your weapons first, do you?
No.
Like, if everyone else is doing it.
It'd be funny then if half the book became numbers, you know, and then they decided they were putting numbers after letters.
Yeah, it's just binary code throughout the fucking Edinburgh Fringe book.
Joe, did you have a little think about anything that was you were loving, annoying, or any bits you were trying?
Things I was looking. You know what? I watched Physical 100 on Netflix this week. because I've been on the trains a lot going around. Have you seen this show on Netflix?
I've seen the poster or the trailer. It looks like it's like a workout show or something.
It's just like it's all these like Korean athletes basically competing against each other to find who's the best like physical specimen basically. So they're all from different fields, and they've basically turned it into like an almost like Squid Games-esque. You're up against each other doing all these physical challenges, and there's something about this. I love these kind of shows. I used to love like watching like Ninja Warrior, or there was one called Ultimate Beastmaster on Netflix years ago, which was just like Sylvester Stallone doing like a big physical obstacle course. And I think there's something around just like that inherent misplaced confidence. And I'll be watching them do some of these challenges, and I'll be watching them literally. I'll be lying on my bed, like eating takeout food, being like, I wouldn't beat all of them, but I reckon I could give it a good go. It's so delusional. Because these guys are specimens, mate. Like there's one guy, they nicknamed him Iron Man because he's a brick shit house of a man. And it's so brazen for me to go like, well, I would have beat him, but I could have turned up and not disgraced myself. But the reality of it is like, no, there's not a chance. These fuckers are like throwing around like boulders that weigh 100 kilos, and I'm going, yeah, I'd give it a go. But that was good. That was good fun, man. I enjoyed it. I would recommend watching it. Also, I because I was watching it like in the background while I was doing other stuff, so I watched the English dubbed version, which I never usually do. I usually just watch stuff in whatever the language is and subtitle it. But I watched it in the dubbed version so that I could still like tap away on my laptop. And they've really over enthusiastically dubbed it with like American voiceovers, so it just sounds like you're watching anime, like in the background. Like these guys are doing like all these incredible feats, and then it's just like, oh my god, he is fantastic at what he does. This is incredible. We can never beat him in a showdown. And you're just like, well, it's just men doing push-ups. Like it's entertaining. I'd recommend it.
The dubbing is like, America is #1.
Yeah, just over and over again.
Yeah. That's class. I'll give that a go. Have you guys finished the Last of Us? Have you been watching The Last of Us?
No,
it's on it. Yeah.
Is it good? I heard it's very good.
Yeah, it's very good.
To watch it.
Oh, it's very good. Yeah. It sort of fits into your thing you were saying a couple of weeks ago, Jack, about like end of the world. So it's not quite French Revolution TV, but it is kind of like obviously it's an apocalyptic story, so like people who didn't have anything in our time have like different skill sets and everything, and it's interesting. It's interesting to see off the back of like having gone through the pandemic. Yeah, but it's great. It's like brilliant television.
I saw a great tweet about it the other day, because I think it's set in a time where the outbreak happened in 2004, I think, is like the premise of the show.
Yeah.
And somebody tweeted saying like, the people in The Last of Us are not real people. Consider when the outbreak happened. These are people who never got to listen to Hey Ya by Outkast. These are not real humans. Like, I was just like, I like it when people just put stuff into context like that, and you're like, oh, that is a shame, actually. If only they could held out for 6 months longer.
Yeah, exactly. Then you got to see Andre 3000 slowly losing his mind. So, any big peeves that anything been really annoying you recently?
I've been weirdly relaxed lately about anything annoying me. I did also watch, because I finished Physical 100 too quickly, and then I watched the latest series of You, because mentally I'm clearly like a 15-year-old girl from America. And I'm watching that, and I'm just a bit like, I don't know. The whole show, the premise of it originally was like a bit ridiculous anyway, wasn't it? It's just this like this guy who is clearly a psychopath, but through sheer force of will and criminal activity and stalking, he gets all these women to fall in love with him and then murders them. So it's already, you have to suspend your belief a little bit to watch it. But then I'm watching the latest one, and I'm just like, this is getting ridiculous. Why am I still invested in what's going on with this man? Like the latest series is like in London. He's like fled all of his problems in America. He's this trail of bodies and moved to London, and he lectures one class in a university as an English professor. under a fake ID. I don't know how he's managed to get this job. Like, he wouldn't pass CRB, but and then he's just living in like this fucking wood panelled Kensington flat off of what salary I don't know. And I'm watching it now, and I'm just like, this is fucking farcical. Like, why am I still watching this fucking TV show? But here we are. You know what I find though when I watch these shows now? I don't know about you guys, because we work in an industry where, as well as doing stand up, you know, you're writing stuff and you're creating and stuff like that. I don't know. Do you guys ever? Because I've kind of got a few things in draft for like pilots for like sitcoms and stuff, and sometimes I find you'll look at it and you'll go, this isn't good enough, and you'll be really hard on yourself. Sometimes I will watch like a TV show or a film on Netflix or Amazon, and I will go, you know what? If this shit is getting commissioned, then maybe mine isn't that bad. Like, I look at things in such a different way now. Like, I will watch a TV show that is horrendous, and the first thing I'll do is go on IMDb and be like, who wrote this?
Yeah.
Who wrote this?
But you know what it is? Because I write magazine articles, right? And when I first started writing them, I had huge enthusiasm for them, and I would spend a whole day writing them, and I put loads of effort in. I'd do loads of research, and then I was emailing them off to magazines, and like they wouldn't publish them, and or I'd occasionally get one published, and I wouldn't get paid. And I would look through the magazine at the other articles and be like, their articles are just utter banal shite. Whereas I'm writing these amazing articles. But now I am the person who gets paid to write articles and puts very little effort into them and couldn't really give a fuck about them. And if they said to me, we don't want your articles anymore, I really wouldn't. It wouldn't bother. I've no passion or interest in them now. But I have magazines always messaging me, asking me to write articles. And I think that's just what happens. It's just...
Yeah, you become like it's my 600th script.
Yeah,
true.
You just, like, I literally, you know, before I was writing them for fun and because I was interested in writing about something. Whereas now I'm just like, oh, I can't really say no to that money. You know? So I do it like it's homework.
So Hollywood is just people are throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, essentially. It feels a more achievable dream.
So instead, it's kind of, I think instead of like, well, you're writing something you want to write and then trying to pitch it. Whereas I think a lot of these things are someone else has come to them and said, listen, will you write this thing about this guy who goes to London, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, that's a shit idea. And then like, we'll give you 30 grand. Okay, yeah.
Because that plot development is straight out of like the big bag of Hollywood. Like, how do we keep this series going? We'll move location. Yeah, we'll give him a new love interest. It's like you can almost see the little bits being pinned up on the board.
Yeah, very formulaic, isn't it?
Yeah, very formulaic.
Very formulaic. Yeah, it's working though. It's keeping you.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, Joe's clocked 612 hours.
Yeah, they could move this man to fucking Mars, and I'd be like, this feels legit. Who's he going to murder here? What's going on?
And have you got any bits you're trying, buddy?
Yeah, a little bit. The late. Well, yeah. You know what? There's one I'm working on at the minute, which is just to do with going for a massage, and it all goes terribly wrong, which happened to me at one point. But there's one bit that I've always got. I saved it in my notes, which you guys know Rosie. Rosie always laughs at this. I saved it in my notes as the bit on zoos that wins me the fucking Perrier. And the Perrier doesn't exist anymore, but which is not a strong start. But I basically just came up with it. It's not fleshed out in any way. It's just an idea that if I get to the end of a new material set and I've got like a minute left, I'll just be like, you guys write zoos with no segue, and then just try it. It's basically just about my issues with zoos. Has fundamentally nothing to do with how poorly the animals are treated. Like, my argument is that if anything, they should be treated worse so that I get better value for money. Because zoos are expensive, and it's a premise that always solicits like a response out of the audience, in that they'll laugh because of how ridiculous it is. But
yeah,
there's still the element in there of me basically saying, lock a tiger in a 6x8 box. Eventually makes people, I think, question me as a person. So I don't think it will be going into club sets anytime soon. But I'm determined. I'm so blindly convinced that there's something in it that one of these days I'm gonna try it at a club that I absolutely shouldn't do and never do comedy again. But we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
I do think there's something in that, because it's a long time since I was last at the zoo, but I do remember going and you pay, and then you might go to like the gorilla thing, and they're like, oh yeah, the gorillas haven't been seen since Tuesday. And it's like, fucking, why are we paying money for? Like, go in there and fucking prod the fucker into sight.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, isn't it? Yeah, I'm like, I constantly reiterate, like my through line throughout the whole thing is just like they'll tell me something, and I'm like, yeah, but I paid £30, bro. Yeah, like I don't get what you want from me, and it's that exact thing of like, you know, oh, the tigers are sleeping. Well, fucking wake them up, bro. Like, this is business hours.
That's what I was wondering.
They can sleep when it's shut.
I was wondering, is it do you need them to be treated worse, or do you need them to work harder? So, you know,
they need to put in a shift.
Like, you know?
Yeah. Put them on a rota. Yeah, you know what I mean. Train them.
Yeah, this one sleeps while this one dances on a unicycle or something. Like, you know, let's make it happen.
And maybe that's my ultimate point. Bring back animals in circuses. Maybe that's my ultimate point.
And there is like real hypocrisy to it, because, you know, they're saying that animals have a better life in the wild, but like we humans who live in the wild, we look down on. Do you know what I mean?
Like, they're probably happier because they don't have to. Yeah, I've got to do shitloads of work in a bit, but you know, they don't.
we all knew kids who dropped out of school very early to live a more, you know, in the wild sort of lifestyle, and you know, that was considered the wrong thing to do. Like, you know, being socialized and brought into school, and I suppose into the captivity of society was the beneficial route. But for animals, that's not the case. Like, there must be some animals that prefer it.
The lazy,
they seem to have a pretty cushy life. Yeah,
it's the lazy ones that prefer it, and that's the problem. They're not working.
Exactly.
Yeah, they haven't got work ethic.
Because you go
there has to be a tiger in the zoo going, you can't sit down and read a book in the forest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And like, my other frustration is like the shit ones are always awake. Like, you go to the zoo, the goats are always active. You know, I didn't go there to see a fucking goat, mate. Like, you know what I mean? Fuming. Long story short, don't bother with London Zoo. It's a fucking waste.
It's always you see nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's life in that.
I think there's. Yeah. I think
so do I. Don't give me hope. All right, because I think there is as well.
Do you know? You're saying about the massage there. There's a bit I haven't tried yet, but I've been thinking, but it hasn't kind of formulated in any way. Have you ever got your hair cut in like a hairdressers rather than a barber's, like a female hairdressers, like a Tony and Guy or somewhere like that, right?
I don't think so. No, I used to sit and watch my mum get a haircut in Tony and Guy. I don't know.
But you have, Tom, right? And you know the way to wash your hair? They go, okay, we're going to wash your hair. And they bring you over, and they're like that. Like, they kind of like create the amount of friction you would create if you were cleaning like a saucepan or something. And so the idea is that I'm in and I'm getting my hair washed, and she's washing my hair. And then I'm like, fuck, I don't think I've ever washed my hair properly in my life before. Do you know what I mean? Because I've never put that kind of effort or friction into it. And then they reload the shampoo a few times. Like, they use like, whereas I've never done a reload. Do you know what I mean? I've only ever
one and done.
Yeah. One and done. So the idea that you're sitting there going, have I never, like, is she looking at my head going, this fucker's never washed his hair?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
One of you is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either she's nuts.
And I would argue it's not the professional
that's
doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's funny. I think it's just an observation, but I don't know if there's any humor in it.
Well, the first place I went was like men of our age, Jack. If someone starts rubbing my hair that fast, I'm like, whoa.
It's all going to fall off.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is very nice. It could be just that they do it because it just feels nice.
Yeah.
You know, but are they actually washing it, you know?
It could be she's a competent, compassionate professional.
But there is an element of you going in and you're like, oh fuck, that's how you do it. You know.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, that's how you do it. That's quite funny. Yeah.
So it's like in the pandemic, you know, like at the very start of the pandemic, before the weekend before we were in lockdown, I was in King's Cross train station, and I went into the toilet, and it was the first time I realized that men's toilets don't have enough sinks. Do you know what I mean? Because normally men aren't washing their hands, but suddenly there was a fucking queue for the men's sink the way there'd be a queue in the female toilet. Because there was only there could be 20 or 30 toilets, but there was like 4 sinks. So the numbers didn't add up, you know.
The pandemic definitely pointed out that we are animals.
Yeah, and everyone was sort of like, you could see like everyone was sort of, you know, they were only washing because they were being watched.
Yeah, that's gone away real quick. Before we wrap up, Joe, you got a new podcast out, haven't you, buddy?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, myself, Jason Tasker and Raj Pujara. We've started a podcast up. It was essentially everybody was putting stuff online, and I had no desire to do sketches online. I think some people are very good at them, but it's something I've tried and I didn't think was for me at the moment. So yeah, we just kind of thought, I could do a podcast. It's content, something to put out. And I think podcasts are certainly taking off. We're not trend setting. We're definitely well behind that trend. But it's essentially, it's just 3 blokes that just turn up and just chat shit for an hour and just have a laugh. And we seem to have picked up a few people on YouTube and Spotify who seem to find it amusing. So yeah, we're sticking with it. It's called The Word on the Streets, or just twats. You can search and it comes up, TWOTS. And we don't really talk about anything particularly pressing. It's literally just whatever comes up, and then just it's almost like 3 lads when you're a teenager and you sit around smoking weed and think you're really wise and questioning the world. That's generally the vibe of it. Just without the weed, just general weariness in life of 3 men in their 30s at this point. But yeah, it's a good laugh, man. We're all enjoying it. So
I've enjoyed it. The clips are
here to stay. Clips are great. Clips are very good. Clips are very good.
Oh, thank you.
Are you doing that in a studio that you hire, or have you kind of built your own little podcast?
No, we've hired out a studio, which is seemingly pretty affordable for the time being. It just makes our life easier because then there's somebody else. None of us are tech savvy enough, so it's just someone there to just basically just set the cameras up, hit record, and then we can just go in and out, and they'll send it to us. And then I'm very fortunate that a friend of mine is an editor in TV, so he was like, it'll take me an hour to edit that every week. I'll do it for you. So just got very fortunate with that. The clips are weird. Like I was at Cardiff Glee a few weeks ago, and someone asked me afterwards, how's your arse after you fell down the escalator at Tottenham Court Road? And I was like, it is weird. It is weird that you have found this in Cardiff. They literally like shouted it out like while I was on stage, and I was like, unless you were just at the back of the room looking me up and Googling me while I was on stage, which is sad. This is odd. But the length that clips travel online is weird as well. Like I had one clip that got a lot of views, and all of a sudden I look at my analytics and there's loads of followers in New York and France and Paris for some reason, and you're like, people messaging me going, when are you going to do shows in Paris? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, I've never given it any thought. But it's the internet's a weird place, and it seemed stupid to not jump on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, makes 100% sense. Well, you were that one, Tom had podcast viewers
I did some shows in Amsterdam this weekend, and a bunch of people found us because of the podcast. They just said the same thing.
Crazy, isn't it?
They're like, found the podcast, found the clips, book tickets, we enjoyed the show, please let us know when you're going to come back. So I mean, if anyone listens to this and is wondering like, are clips and podcasts worth it, I would say yes, keep doing them, keep building up. So, Joe, where can the people find you when they're not finding your clips of you falling downstairs at Tottenham Court Road?
Yeah, I mean, you can find them as well. if you can follow me on Instagram. It's underscore Joe Bingham. Nice and simple. Clearly, someone else had the original. And then within that, I think that in my bio, there's links to the podcast at The Word on the Streets, which is a bit wordy, but I think Twats comes up as well. But yeah, underscore Joe Bingham. You can find me on there. Or weirdly, you can also find me on OnlyFans, but there's no pictures of my arsehole, so apologies. Yeah.
That's
none yet.
I was going to say
none yet.
None yet.
That's wait until the heating bills start racking up, and then
exactly. We'll see how the comedy goes, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, buddy, it's been great having you on. Really fun chat.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been great.
Cheers. Thanks a million for coming on, Joe. Yeah, great guest. Well done.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, lads. Have a good weekend.
See you soon. See you on the circuit.
Cheers.
See you soon, lads. Bye bye.
Tom and Jack having a crack. Tom and Jack having a crack.